Back in 2008, Samuel K. Cohn Jr. studied the Black Death and found out it was not just one large outbreak, it was actually in three separate waves. First in the 1330s, which had to do with swollen lymph nodes, then again in the 14th century, which was mainly defined by a viral sickness that spread more easily, and finally, the last wave in the 15th century, which was defined by both swollen lymph nodes and virality. The Black Death was a turning point in history due to the number of lives it took, and its effect on society cannot be denied since almost half of the population died during this tragic event.
The National Library of Medicine's article talks about how bugs like fleas and lice played a big part in spreading the plague in Europe. Rats would have insects on them, and when they got near humans, the insects would travel to them, giving them the plague. Not only that, but the technology during that time was entirely useless and hardly helped them cure people from the plague at all. Despite small advancements in medicine, the symptoms remained consistent, characterized by swollen and painful lymph nodes, fevers, and chills.
The bacterium Yersinia pestis was responsible for the historical outbreaks and continues to be the culprit in recent cases. The article emphasizes the persistent role of fleas as vectors transmitting the disease from rodents to humans. In 1348, Florence faced a devastating pestilence, a deadly sickness that spread quickly, taking lives in households and leaving no one untouched. The disease brought a terrible fever and swelling in the groin or under the armpit. Even animals suffered the same fate. The illness was so terrifying that when it entered a home, everyone fled in fear, abandoning the sick. Doctors were scarce, demanding high fees, and examined patients from a distance. Families were torn apart, with sons abandoning fathers and sisters leaving sisters.
The city was in chaos, burying the dead without proper rituals, and many died without confession or last sacraments. Hunger added to the suffering. All those falling ill were often left alone, locked in, and abandoned. Even if some were lucky enough to get food left nearby, help was rare, and people avoided those connected to the sick, believing they carried a curse. The plague brought unimaginable suffering. The conditions in the environment and how people interacted with each other influenced which type of sickness was more common. So, instead of one big disaster, there were different waves of the disease, influenced by various things like the weather and how people lived.
The Black Death was a negative turning point in history that caused a lot of mayhem in the world, and saying that it was problematic is an understatement. But it did help us with understanding pandemics through the ability to examine the leftovers from the plague. And this undeniably helped with pandemics afterwards like COVID. There is no arguing that the Black Death was influential to society.